What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Audio Slave Podcast. This is episode number 27. It's September 10th, 2020. I'm with my friends Anthony and Tony. How you guys doing today?
Good, man.
What's going on, man? I'm doing great.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a good day today. If you guys are following our socials, or if you want to, we're at Audio Slave on Twitter and Instagram. So check us out there. And we say this quite a bit, but we're always looking for feedback, segment ideas, anything at all. Just send us a quick message. We're at audioslavepodcast@gmail.com. So we're always looking for some kind of insight and just overall fan mail and so forth. With that said, we have a little fan thing going on our Instagram. You want to kind of plug that?
Yeah, so check our Instagram page at Podioslave, as Nate said. We have a contest running until next Tuesday. Does that sound right? Yeah, that we started yesterday. We went last week. If you listen to last week's episode, we went through Nate's nerdery, and we found some stuff in there that we figured we might be able to get the listeners in on. So there's a 15.5 by 18.5 cardstock Blink-182 self-titled era poster up for grabs. All you got to do is follow us, tag 2 friends in the comments, and like the post. And you're golden. You're in. And we'll do a randomizer next Tuesday and throw it out to the winner, and we'll ship to you wherever you are in the world. Right? We said international was cool.
Yes.
So. Yep.
Audio Slave on Instagram and then on Twitter too. Follow us there. Why not? I mean, we'd love to get some more followers there too. Twan, we had a guest tonight. Want to intro the guest? Well, who we have?
Yeah.
We did have a guest, and anyone that listens to us know we say it every episode, we're nerds. You know, we practice the art of nerdery. We dig into the deep cuts, the deep dives. We love the music tangents, and this guest fits that perfect. So this guest is none other than Mr. Iann Robinson himself. So you probably remember Iann from his MTV VJ days. Before that, he was in public access television. He was a radio DJ up in Boston, has written for online publications. He's a big comic guy. He's a podcaster. He's got the Cream podcast, Comics Rule Everything Around Me. But yeah, we have not had a TV personality on this show.
Yeah, first time. Yep.
We've had DJs. We did have a DJ. We've had promoters. But Iann, in so few words, checked a lot of boxes for us.
I think in a lot of words, not in so few.
Yeah.
He likes to talk. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Ian's the man. Like, as soon as he jumped on, I just had a smile because, and I say this when we're in the interview, but he sounds the exact same 20 years later.
Yep.
What do you think, Nate?
No, totally. He's a tangent king. We're all tangent. We joke about tangents here, and he would go on stories, and we're sitting here like, damn, so cool you were there, like firsthand. He's got all the beef and all the non-beef that you can imagine. So really cool stories, in depth. Definitely didn't hold back at all, which I thought was great because we
was
like
cool.
we see ourselves as kind of like an uncensored freelance podcast. And he was like, yeah, man. Even pre-show, he was like, yeah. We always kind of give somewhat disclaimers like, hey, if there's anything you don't want to touch, like, we definitely won't go there. And he's like, nah, I'm an open book. Let's roll. I'm like, sweet. Mm-hmm. That's the best. Yeah. So it's like a behind the music type. Let's just go all in. So it was rad. Yeah. He was really cool. And we're all metal fans. So the fact that he had a big take in the metal scene with his stint at MTV, but also, all the things around it. The WBCN thing kind of gave it a locality type thing for Boston too, which is nice.
So without further ado, here is Iann Robinson. Cool. Hey, Iann, how you doing tonight, man? Thanks for coming on.
Sure, I'm good. I'm relaxing in my house after my work is very. I work with the public and I work helping them fix software. So it's a lot of. It's like 8 hours of people bitching at me. So the nighttime is it's like me and my wife and our 2 dogs decompressing. So this is great. This is something like unusual and kind of fun. So I appreciate you guys having me on. And anybody who remembers the old man from MTV is a nice treat.
Well, we're now old men too, so we're like, hey, we're thinking we always brainstorm and always coming up with different things, different ideas. We've been going for about 6 months, and we're like, it'd be cool, Iann. We remember Iann from those MTV days because it was kind of our formative years with music. Mm-hmm. So it'd be really cool if he'd be down to talk to us for a little bit. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. So we were super excited to have you on for that.
Yeah, and I like whenever anybody wants to talk to me, I'm always amazed because I was on MTV. I was only on for about 3 years, and it's been almost 20 since I was gone. And so I'm not like saying this to toot my own horn or anything, but the fact that I didn't kind of impact that people would still be interested in anything that I have to say is very flattering. It's kind of heartwarming, especially like, I live in the Midwest. I own a house. I'm in the suburbs. I mean, I'm as far from like rocker as you could possibly get. So to kind of go back to those days and remember is always fun. So again, I appreciate you guys having me on for sure.
Hell yeah.
Heck yeah. The nostalgia is strong with COVID, right?
Yeah, right,
so.
Dude.
Sure.
So Ian, we're predominantly a music focused podcast, so we're always curious about our guests' music come up. So like obviously you didn't wake up one day and you were on MTV. Like I assume you're a big music head, music nerd.
Yeah.
What are some early memories?
The two things that helped me get through life, even from an early age, were music and comic books. I was young, I was weird, I was heavy my whole life, so I was never part of the in crowd. And long before don't bully and you shouldn't be mean to fat people and whatever, we had the late 70s and early 80s when it was like crucify anybody who's different. And so when I was a kid, there were just certain songs that would capture something, and it was usually something else that was weird. So my first memory of really being like, they're talking to me, was Devo. Devo was like the first band where I was like, wait. And my father, who hated Devo, he took me to see them, Radio City Music Hall, for the New Traditionalist tour. And I was like weeping. I was like a child. And there was something about that show that caught me into not just loving music, but loving live music. And it just kind of grew from there. So Devo is definitely one. And it wasn't like, Whip It was a great song. I'm never going to shit on the hits. I think Whip It's a great song. But that was not the song that, like, Through Being Cool and their weird ass fucking cover of Satisfaction by the Stones. And that was the stuff that really sort of caught me. And then I started to realize after that I didn't share musical taste. Like my friends were all into, I don't know, like Duran Duran. And Duran Duran had some great songs, but I wasn't like, her name is like, that wasn't my vibe. So like the first record I ever bought with my own money was wasn't my allowance, right? Like earned money and went out and bought it, was Run DMC's first record. Because when I was in New York, hip hop got very big, and I got really into hip hop, not because I was any kind of trailblazer, but because I was a white kid growing up in uptown New York City. So predominantly what I was surrounded by until they started cleaning up. When I say cleaning up, I mean making the rents really unaffordable. Was in uptown New York was mostly kids of ethnicity, mostly Spanish, some black, but mostly Spanish, and they were playing. They were just playing hip hop. It was just the thing, and I listened to it, and I was like, I really gravitated to the sort of outsider mentality of it, which is funny to say now that it's the defining principle of pop culture. But so I bought, the Run DMC, and out of that, I just was into anything that was outsider, and not forcibly so. I mean, I definitely went through that in my teens, but just anything that I was just always attracted to the weird. Devo, like one of my first records, I have this record where some band got together and did like this weird psychedelic Planet of the Apes record. And no one's everyone I show, no matter how big a record collector they are, like, I've never fucking seen this before. This is amazing. And then Devo, and then from there it was, Run DMC, Houdini, all the hip hop guys in the beginning. And then from there, when I was a kid, I remember a kid that lived in my neighborhood. I can't remember his name. He sort of started taking me to punk rock shows. Mm-hmm. And that's where I found punk rock. So, and that was where I felt like I belonged. So like my earliest memories of music was that it was like a lean-to or an igloo or like a shelter from a world that just seemed to be going, you don't belong here. Why are you here? No one wants you here. And I would sit in that igloo and I would listen to Devo and I would read comic books, and it would take me away. And it would also fester creativity and my own desire to sort of create my own reality. And then I found punk rock shows and CBGBs and hardcore. And while a lot of that stuff that is glorified is like we were all unified together, and a lot of it was very high school, it was the place that I felt like I belonged. And there was also, punk rock was the first music that spoke to the anger that was rising in me through the teen. Because, hip hop, I loved it, but I don't know that much about urban blight. I was a white kid from a middle-class family. I wasn't like out suffering. But when I got to hardcore, these people were just talking about like, especially like bands like Black Flag and Minor Threat. They were talking about, the women who leave, when you like a girl and they don't like you, not just like in like a sing-songy way, but like the anger you feel when you feel like you're going to be alone forever, being an outsider, just feeling ugly and unwanted, and that really appealed to me. And then it just grew from there. I remember I was listening to punk rock, and I was kind of like the reverse of heavy metal parking lot. I was punk rock parking lot. I was like, oh, that heavy metal shit can fucking fry in the hell. And blah, blah, blah. Fuck them. We used to always get that shit from the metal kids, and we'd give it back. And then one day I was flipping through a magazine, and I think it was Jeff Hanneman. It wasn't Kerr King. Jeff Hanneman was like on his guitar was a Dead Kennedy sticker.
Nice.
And I was like, who the fuck is this metalhead with a Dead Kennedy sticker? Who the fucking dare you? And then my friend was like, why don't you listen to this? And he handed me Raining Blood. And I was like, oh, I'm wrong. And then I had to I had to go out and find metal. And that's where it all came. And then as I grew up, it's like anything else with fetish properties or something that becomes a bigger part of you than even you are. You have to know about all the aspects of it, and
you gotta know everything. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Like me and my friend would get together. My buddy Brian, who still lives in Boston, we would get together in his car, this giant awful van, like a soccer mom van, and like we'd buy iced coffee, and we would sit there and just fucking analyze records to the point of where everyone was like, "You guys are losers," and that was everything for me, and it still is. I'm not as up on the new stuff because new music really has to punch me in the face before I really pay attention to it. And that's kind of the give and take. Like you get my age and you're sort of like, I'm not up on the new shit. I'm too busy going back and trying to find all the old stuff that I didn't realize was cool because I was too cool for it when I didn't really know what I was doing. Jazz records and, old funk records and, the old blues and all this stuff that like I knew about, but I didn't, really get into because it wasn't angry like metal and punk rock. Mm-hmm. And now I'm not really angry anymore. So, I mean,
it sounds like pretty organic discovery, which a lot of like punk and hardcore kids, like it is organic. It's a relative or a friend's older sibling and whatnot. So you find it, you love it. And then at some point it must turn into, hey, maybe I can do this for a career. Cause I know there was a time when you were on the radio, right? In Boston.
I was on WBCN for a little while. I mean, I was on we're going to make you prove yourself midnight to 6 a.m. shift.
Oh, geez.
And well, the thing I discovered with BCN was a lot like I discovered with MTV. It's a lot of frosting and not a lot of cake. So BCN, they were super nice to give me a gig, and I did not have any money when I was living in Boston, and Boston is crazy expensive. So God bless them, and I thank them for that. But I got there, and they're like, what you're playing is pre-recorded. You'll just come out of it, you'll say this, and then you'll go back into it. So I would like listen, and we played like Smashing Pumpkins like 1,000 times. And so I was like, well, okay, I'm not really making any plans on what to play. So what am I doing here other than going blah,
right?
And touching on some nostalgic trip? But yeah, my original plan was to be a rock star. So I was in 1,000 bands playing drums, and the last band I was in, Puny Human, the last serious band, we opened for we opened for the Melvins, we opened for Monster Magnet, we opened for Henry Rollins' Black Flag reunion thing that he put together to help with the West Memphis 3. We were on our way, and then we had a massive falling out. And before a massive falling out over the dumbest shit ever. Just like, if I could go back in time and do it, I would pull myself over and go, you're getting angry about nothing. But that was my thing for a long time. I just got angry.
You can relate with like the prima donnas.
Oh yeah. It was not even prima donnas. It was just like everything. I had to take everything personal. Yeah. Nothing could roll off my back.
Sounds
nothing
like me at 22.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I finally had to go on, I finally became part of the Zoloft Smile because it was so bad that it was getting in the way, and being on fucking brain drugs where when they work for you and you can see the world in a different light, you're like, I should have done this years ago. But Puny Human, that was the last serious band I was in, and then I don't know, you hit this age where you're like, I don't really want to tour. It isn't romantic anymore. It's painful, and I'm tired of being broke. I'm tired of having shit jobs. I'm tired of having no roots and yada yada yada, and so you move along, and then also before we could ever really reconcile or get together, our lead singer died of lung cancer. So so we were just like, all right, well, this is done. And now it's been so long since we've seen each other. Like, they have kids and shit. I don't know anything about their lives. They don't know anything about mine. And I just got tired of playing drums. Like, I'll fuck around in my basement with them, but I have no interest in being in a band. Probably my biggest flaw is once I've done something and I get bored of it, I really have no desire to do it again. People are like, don't you want to be on TV again? No. I'd like to get the money, but I have no interest on being on television again. Ever.
Been there, done that. Don't need to go back to it because you've done that already. You've done it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of weirdness that I wasn't equipped to handle that I don't know that I ever would want to be equipped to handle, which is a weird thing to say. But
was it this part, like in this transition, where you're like, all right, maybe I'll start like a public access show? In that phase where you're like, I'll just start kind of
the public access show, the Monkey Butt Sex show happened it actually is how I got the MTV gig. So long story short, probably not short. So there was this kid who had his TV show on public access, and for all the millennials out there that are listening, public access is pre-YouTube. So if you wanted to do something fun and creative and get it out there in a TV kind of vibe, you couldn't show everyone in the world with an upload. You had to do it and to take it, and the best you could get was your local area. So we had Manhattan and Brooklyn and the Bronx. And there was this kid who had a show in there called Squirt TV, and he was a cunt, and everyone fucking hated him. Sit there just to fucking hate him. And finally, I was like, well, this is stupid. We're just sitting here ragging on the kid. Let's see if we can do better. And so, of course, it's like when you go work out for the first time. We had all these grand plans of how wonderful this show was going to be. It was going to be amazing, and we were going to have all these skits and all this really in-depth stuff. And then it came time to do it. We didn't have any money, and my father had died recently. This is back 95. And he had left me some money. So I wasn't really working, but the other two guys, the twins who actually went on to be in Puny Human, who we had the falling out, and all connects back, they had jobs. They're like, we can't do this. We're fucking working for rent and shit. Like, what? And I was like, all right. So I sat I was like, one day I got a video camera and I put it in front of me, and I sat there and I just made fun of records. And
nice.
and I was like, fuck this record. Ha ha ha. Aren't I funny?
It's like Beavis and Butthead, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all of us, like one time, like when Metallica's Load came out, we did this whole thing where like it started off with me in the bathroom when I was screaming, and then a friend of mine was like under the toilet and he poured Gatorade in it, and they showed it and it was all bloody, and they pulled the CD out and they're like, what a load of shit. Ha ha, aren't we clever? And we had a fake black metal guy that I played called Narcoleptus, and whatever I was like really getting into it, I would fall asleep. And like all just kind of like weird shit like that. But we didn't have any money and they didn't have any time. So I just was like, I'd make fun of records. And I used to make fun of hardcore records, which people were like, you're fucking nuts, man. Those people are going to kill you. And instead they embraced me. And
nice.
I was at a No Effect show trying to get Fat Mike in all his grand royalness to bestow upon me some of his time for our little show. And of course he couldn't be bothered. But Pete from Sick of It All, who we all like worship Sick of It All in New York. Yeah. Came up to me and was like, I watch your show every week. And I was like, you want what?
Awesome.
You want to run that by me again? And
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I was like, thank you, sir. And he was like, he's like, you want to interview the band? And I was like, what band? And he goes, Sick of It All. I was like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. I'm all right. And so we interviewed them, and then we interviewed H2O, and we interviewed all these other bands, and I became friends with those guys. And then we started doing cheap music videos for them, and it all kind of grew from there. And Monkey Butt Sex became so big that like one time we were in California, and these guys were like, oh, the Monkey Butt Sex guys. And we were like, oh, you live in New York? And they're like, no, we live here. And we were like, okay, how did you see the show? And people were filming the show in New York and like sending tapes and getting public access time in other cities to play that show. It was fucking
awesome.
Weird. And bands were calling, and we were getting like, we interviewed the Melvins. We were supposed to interview Sepultura, and we didn't because they broke up like 2 days before we were supposed to interview them. Like all this craziness.
Damn.
And then one of the guys who used to watch it religiously with his friends when they were getting drunk was this guy who went on to be the president of MTV News. And he was like, I got a guy we should probably hire. And then that's how like the Monkey Butt Sex show was, we were going to big middle finger to the Squirt TV kid. And then we just ran out of ideas. So we started making fun of stuff. And everybody was like, well, if you make fun of stuff, why don't you be in a band? And we're like, yeah, we should do that. So Jason and Josh, those are the two guys. They were phenomenal musicians long before I started bashing around on the drums, and we came together, and that was sort of born out of, so it was all sort of born out of the same, like 5 years, like from 90 to 95. So
then you started MTV not long after that.
2000 was my first.
What did they have you doing initially?
Nice.
initially they didn't have me doing shit. Initially they brought me in and they were like, okay, we love what you do. Now sit there and don't do anything. And we're like, okay.
Hurry up and wait.
I would write news breaks for the other people who were on air, and I would do what's it called, teleprompter practice. And they had, it was funny because they blocked out this time. They were like, well, you'll be doing teleprompter practice for about 2 months. I was like, okay. And wow. Teleprompter is reading, so I don't know who needs 3 months to read. So they sat me down and they were like, do this. And I was like, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. I'm Ian Robinson and this is MTV News. And they were like, oh, well, I guess he doesn't need the other 2.5 months. So finally they put me on air. But they were real. See, the thing is, they brought me in and they said, we love what you do on Monkey Butt Sex. We want you to do that here. And I said, okay. And then I went out and did it. And they're like, whoa, hold the phone. We didn't really mean what you do there. Yeah. We meant what you do there as through the lens of you like everything that we do. And that was very, 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 very difficult because MTV should have been the deciding vote of pop culture. Like, we can bring you whatever we want and expose it. And instead they were just the media wing of any record company. Like, I made fun of Good Charlotte and they called me in and rapped me on the knuckles for making fun of Good Charlotte, not because they gave a shit about Good Charlotte, but because Good Charlotte was on the same label with Eminem. And so the label would be like, well, you can't have Eminem. And I'd be like, but you're MTV. And this is when MTV still mattered. So I was like, tell them to go fuck themselves. Eminem doesn't get MTV. And they didn't see it that way. So that was always the argument with me and them. Is I thought the MTV's drive should be to bring about change or show new music or showcase something.
Hell yeah. Yep.
And they were like, no, we're all about like, you know, we status quo. I remember. And the problem I had with that was the hypocrisy. If you're going to come out and say, hi, we are a multi-billion-dollar corporation and we have a bottom line, and our bottom line is to make you people who are young think that what we do is the greatest thing ever. So we are going to push down your throat that who pays us to push down your throat this stuff. You can like it or not. I'm fine with that. But MTV was like, we're cutting edge. We're on the edge. We're crazy. Yeah. We're spit in the face of the man. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. I'm part of this. Now everybody's looking at me like, I'm like, you know, what you can do.
It seems like you were very vocal and your hands were tied at the same time. Like, with that said, did you have any kind of personal way to kind of put some music up front?
Yeah. At one point, see, one of my biggest, I don't know, rivals, but like so MTV treated everybody like all the heads treated us like we were little children. So I guess my biggest rival for daddy's affection was Gideon Yago. And Gideon, I don't know how Gideon is now. It's been fucking 20 years since I've seen that kid. But when I knew him, he was a little much. He was a little hard to take. Like, at one point,
we joke about Gideon on this podcast, so it's funny that you brought him up. Sorry.
Yeah, mainly because we're jealous.
Like, we could have done that too. We could have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gideon was a good kid. He had a good heart, and he was smart as a whip. I'll give him that. But he was very much into the then burgeoning idea of the hipster. Mm-hmm. And it's like, when you see something horrible in its larva stage, it's almost worse than when it's fully developed. And so I remember one time he was running around like, you know, Les the news reporter, like, you know, Johnny on the spot, trying to get out there about 9/11. Like, his reporting from TV would have something to do with 9/11. He was wearing this fedora. I mean, outside of Tom Waits, nobody should wear a fedora, like the Blues Brothers. So he's walking around wearing this fedora, and I finally got a gutful of it. So I took a piece of paper and I bent it in half and I wrote news across it and stuck it in the side, like the way they would have it like in the 40s. And he found out and was not stoked. But he would do things like I was listening to this band, I forget what it was, Palehead or it was Egg Hunt or whatever. And he was like, dude, is that new Fugazi? And I was like, nah, man, this is Ian's stuff before Fugazi. And he was like, oh. And then a month later, he'd be listening to the same record and telling somebody in this condescending tone that, oh, this is, you know, Ian MacKaye before he did Fugazi. And I was like, all right, that's cool, man. Whatever. Good for you. So we were always bashing heads. So he was constantly talking about whatever fucko band that he liked, you know, like New Radiant Storm Kings or whatever bullshit. And I was finally with him and I was like, look, motherfucker, if this guy can talk about the fucking Strokes and all these other shit bands that he likes, can I talk about the shit bands that I like? So they gave me this thing called Heavy Music Headlines. So I would get one news report every day to talk about anything I wanted that had to do with heavy music. So that was about the extent. And the bands really appreciated it because these are bands like, I'm talking about, Meshuggah, and no one on MTV is going to ever talk about Meshuggah. Right. And that was cool. The only thing that was a problem is that between MTV's opinion of me and my own sort of doing myself in, feeling like I had to bring these heavy bands to the forefront, I kind of got locked into this metal guy thing. So people would play me metal and I'd be like, yeah, that's terrible. And they're like, oh man, this is, fucking, Blast Ice Furnace. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't care. There's no song. This is awful. Yeah. And they're like, how could you like Immortal and not like this? I'm like, Immortal, they are good and they're not. I don't know how much easier I can make it for you. And so that got weird. And then of course you spend 6 or 8 months at MTV, and then everywhere I went, I was the MTV sellout.
Yeah.
Why am I here?
You're the metal guy on MTV. And...
Yeah. So people are throwing things at me at Ozfest and, yelling that they're going to kick the shit out of me. And I was like,
that's
like, why am I even trying?
Yeah, that's crazy. Cause it's like, you get that gig and you're probably thinking at first, I made it. I had this public access show. Mm-hmm. I'm now on what you, before maybe you started, before you kind of knew what was going on there. I'm on this place that's a little cutting edge. That's still a big deal as far as music goes, and they're tastemakers in that aspect. And then all of a sudden that happens. And it's, you're not a guy that, just from listening to you talk about the stuff you grew up with, that was stuck in one box. And I think we're similar to that. We grew up with, what was popular on the radio and on MTV, but we also found other things, and it wasn't just one genre. We jumped around to everything. So to hear you say that, it's shit, man. That's kind of crazy.
It was, and also, MTV lies. So that didn't help. They were just straight up like, we want you to do this. And then I got there and that's not what they wanted me to do. They're like, we want you to be our music guy. And I got there and they wanted me to be their metal guy. And what was funny is that I was the only guy that could interview anybody. Like even them doing that, they couldn't really control it. Like I remember one time Gideon had said something to make some rap guy mad, and Eminem. He'd made Eminem mad which was not hard to do.
Yeah, who didn't make Eminem mad?
Don't all of us have at least one song about us written by him?
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, well, we can't. Who can we send down that would make sense? So I got to send Ian down. So I ended up interviewing, I would interview, one day I'd be interviewing Eminem, the next day I'd be interviewing Slayer, and then I'd be interviewing Norah Jones. So I was like, okay, because you guys are in trouble and you don't have anybody else to talk to these people, you're doing something that would work really, really well if you actually just do it. And they just couldn't see it. And so I was like, all right, then I'll just do it that way. But the biggest problem they had is that and this was my own fuck up. Like when people ask me why I got fired, I say, well, MTV hung me out to dry, but I also handed them a bunch of rope and was like, what do you want to do with this? I was kind of a cliche. Like I had people around me telling me that everything I did was fucking genius and hysterical. I had celebrities who were using me for, and if you guys want to get your vomit bags, you can, using me for street cred and like all this. And I was too young and too stupid and sucking it up like a vacuum. I was like, God damn, I know lots more than anyone else. And that's right. Elijah Wood was coming to me about, he had some music suggestions and he wanted to talk to me about, and I got really, people were just falling all over themselves and I got real into it. And as many behind the music fucking stories as I've seen, I still bought right into it. And I just became kind of an asshole. And I just did stupid shit at that channel that had even nothing to do with fighting the man, just being a dick because I didn't know what else to do. I guess it's like, I just turned into a fucking masturbating monkey in a rainstorm because I didn't really know how to handle anything. And that's what led me to being fired. The rumors about why I got fired are all kind of bullshit. But what got me fired is that people just they'd had enough. And, 50 being much different than 27, I can look back at it now and be like, oh yeah, that's probably a lot more my fault than I would have let on when I got fired. But, MTV, they say one thing and they do another. And I guess that's just the way that industry goes. And you either write it out. That's why I think podcasting is so great, because no one can stop it.
Right.
It's a part of the internet where it's like, they can't commodify it, because how do you commodify something that is so random? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, sure, there's like Joe Rogan's podcast makes $1 billion, but nobody, as of yet, they haven't found out a way to, like, we're going to do, we might have a company that has a bunch of podcasts, but then there's another company that has the same, like, no one's monetized it to the point of where they control it. And so
They're trying.
And they will until they get it right.
Right.
But that's why I love podcasting. That's why I like the whole idea of, downloading music originally, and then it kind of got away from me. But anyway, I like anything that's random. It's just like, this is honest form of expression, good, bad, or indifferent, whether you like what they're talking about or you don't. And that to me is always a good thing. But MTV makes you think that that's what's going to be, and you get there and there's a lot of ropes and slings and chains and stuff, and if you fight against it long enough, they don't want you around. And I didn't help myself by just being a fucking asshole. And so, I learned a valuable lesson.
You mentioned a lot of high profile names. Like you mentioned Slayer, you're interviewing them. Then you go from them to Norah Jones. And is there anyone that surprised you, like personality wise? But it was either like, you know what, these guys are really cool, or, almost the reverse, turned you off or anything like that? Because
most of what I ran into was very positive, and the bands that I really wanted to be good people were usually not bad. And the bands that I was like, these guys suck, I would meet them and they'd be so nice that I felt like a fucking asshole. Probably one of the best examples of that is, so I got on this, I don't know why. If I could go back and talk to myself at 28 and be like, exactly, why did you hate the Strokes so much? I mean, the big thing that turned me off was when their first song came out and everybody was like, oh my God, they've got like this original sound. And I was like, that song is American Girl by Tom Petty. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why you think this is so original. And they were pretty, and they weren't, ugly rock and roll. And I had this theory that like only ugly people could make good music for a long time. It was a dumb theory, and so I was just like, fuck these guys. And I had heard the record once. I never gave it a chance. And so I talked endless shit. Any magazine that would listen to me on air, whatever, just endless amounts of shit. So one day I'm at a radio show and I'm backstage, and here, so it's me and System of a Down and Incubus, which we established earlier. So thank you. And I forget, there was one other person there, and then a bunch of radio people. And then the Strokes weren't there, but Julian, the lead singer, had shown up for whatever reason. And he walks in and he's like, he's still being Julian. And I'm like, I'm already on like go. And he comes over and he's like, hi, I'm Julian. It's nice to meet you. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And like, for no fucking reason, like just to be a cunt. And he was like, okay. And he walked away and he came back and he's like, hey man, I'm just trying to like shake your hand and be nice. Why are you being a jerk? And I was like, fuck you. Yeah. And I got up like I was going to get all like in his face and we were going to fight. And he and I are like kind of flexing, which was kind of funny because I don't look threatening and neither does he. So it was like the two most unthreatening white boys in the universe going at each other. And then all of a sudden, the third most unscary white boy in the world, the lead singer of Incubus, comes over and says, come on guys, break it up. And I was like, all right, this is weird. Even in my brain, as angry as I was like, this fight's being broken up by another band guy. Very strange. And the System of a Down guys, who I actually became friends with later on, are just looking like they just really wanted to see me beat him up. Like they were just really excited about the idea of me kicking the shit out of this guy at a radio show. And so they broke us up and Julian left. And then I sat down. Then he came back in. He sat down next to me. He's like, you really hate us that much? And for some reason, I had a moment of clarity. And I was like, no, I guess not. And I have a picture of me and him together, like palling around on this giant sofa. Nice. And nice. But like, yeah, like that was the biggest of me just being a dick and expecting him just to be this shitheel. And he couldn't have been a sweeter guy. The guys, what are their names? The guys that did the Genesis cover that go, they had a ball.
Disturbed.
Yep. They suck. Like they're fucking horrible. And I met them.
I'm glad you said that.
I met them and I was like, they couldn't, like, I was like, these guys are really fucking nice. Like just sweetheart guys. Korn. Like I met Korn and I was totally expecting them to be dicks. And the lead guy,
John Davis.
Korn 1, I don't know what his name is.
Korn 1 is good.
Korn 1 was like, he had that Geiger
mic stand. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was over there looking at it, and he comes over and he's like, "Oh, you're a Geiger fan?" I was like, "I'm a big Geiger fan." And I showed him. I have a tattoo of Geiger's head of Baphomet, the devil, and then he did this picture of a gun and these little weird humanoid things with a bullet. So I have that on my arm too. And he was like, "Oh, cool." Nice. So we started talking about Geiger, and like within, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, I kind of forgot that it was, the guy who fucking erupted into, Beavis in the middle of one of his. I don't know what song that was, but all of a sudden, in one of his songs, he was going, wah, and you're just like, settle down, Beavis. Like, what's going on? And I
Freak on a Leash. Freak on a Leash, maybe.
That's it. I don't know. My friends would listen to that only to make fun of Fieldy's bass, which we were like, is he playing like one of those like Jamaican drum things, or is he playing bass? Because it was like clink, clink, clink. It was the worst. And he sounds like that live. It was really funny. But like, so I would talk, and then, you start talking to these people, and they're humans, and all they want is to play their music and for people to like it. And, and you're like, yeah, but all they do it for is for money and, to get chicks. And it's like, I think it was Patton Oswalt, his great routine about like, yeah, you know what other people do for that? They like murder people and sell drugs and blow up houses and shit. So if these guys want to go ooh, so that they can become rich and get chicks, who the fuck cares? Right. And I just didn't have that attitude. I had too much punk rock shoved up my ass, and I had to spew it all over everybody, and it was just unnecessary. And you can't avoid when people are nice. As far as people being dicks, Tom Araya was kind of a dick, which was a bum out. But then again, I was always a Jeff Hanneman guy. So meeting Tom Araya and him being like, and just like weird and dickish didn't really bother me too much. I'm trying to think who else was Lemmy was amazing. And nice. And I had like a weird worship thing with Lemmy. Like Lemmy walked in the room and I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I can't interview this guy.
Nervous.
Like, why
That's
am I
awesome.
Fucking talk?
We would have had trouble with that too, I think.
Yeah, he was like, and the best part is, so this is a great Lemmy story. And am I talking too much?
No, this is great.
Okay, because I haven't let them get a word in edgewise. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Keep going.
So we're doing this thing like the return of the Headbangers Ball, because they were thinking of bringing it back, and they wanted to do a best of retrospective. So they wanted to talk about people who were there. So they were like, well, you're going to interview all these people in this like bungalow at this Hollywood thing. You're going to talk to Rob Zombie. You're going to talk to Ozzy. You're going to talk to all these people. And I was like, okay, because these are some of my heroes. Like they're like, we're going to whip out Ozzy. And I was like, I don't know if I can handle that. But then they go, and Lemmy. And I was like, excuse me, you mean that Lemmy is from Motorhead? I was like, I can't. Like, Ian, you have to. I was like, I cannot talk to Lemmy. He'll come in and I'll view him and I'll fall and I'll just run into traffic and die. I can't do it. And they were like, Ian, you don't have a choice. I was like, you're fine. So it's 9:00 in the morning and they sent the car. And when they sent the car, he demanded that they have a bottle of Jack Daniels in the car. Nice. So he comes into the hotel room with one bottle of Jack Daniels that's open that he's drinking from, and the one that we gave him in this hand. And then he sits down. He's like, "How you doing, Lemmy?" And I was like, "Hi, God. How are you?" And the best. So then he pulls out 2 glasses from like under this table, puts them up, pours 2 drinks in them, and then just keeps drinking from the bottle for the rest of the interview and doesn't even acknowledge that they're there, doesn't offer anybody a drink, doesn't take them with him when he leaves. And I was like, what? I wanted to be like, what the fuck was that? But I was afraid it was like some weird thing that he had to do, and I would blow it up and he'd get mad and walk out. And then the best, so we interview him, and then one of the people was like, oh, Ian's got a huge Motorhead tattoo. And because I have a huge Motorhead skull on my back, and he was like, huh. And then I showed it to him, and he was like, oh, that's something. And it's like walked out. I was like, yes, Lemmy's not super, but he's like, I don't, maybe I see with Lemmy Motorhead tattoos. And he was super cool. Ozzy was super cool. Even Zombie. I mean, me and Zombie, like we got into it about like horror films and stuff, and nice. And some of the stuff that he liked, and I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me, dude. And old stuff that I know. So all these people were usually super genuine, and they were just like human beings that wanted people to like their music. And a lot of the more pretentious and superfluous people, they didn't let me near, or I didn't have any. Like I interviewed Britney Spears once, which was interesting.
No, I bet.
Well, like even when you talk to somebody dumb, you'll see that there's like a light on in here. There's no light. She was like a human bonsai tree. Like she'd been clipped and tied and stunted for so long that she had no idea what to do. And I was like, she's gonna flip the fuck out. And when she did, I was like, that's right there. That. Yeah. But I was like, something's not healthy. And I talked to Christina Aguilera one time, and like they just don't have anything to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's not their fault. They were young when they were picked up, and they were
industry plant, right? I mean,
and then you just go, all right, well, this wasn't very interesting. I don't really have any desire to talk to them. I'm trying to think of Tom Araya was kind of a dick. Fieldy was a cunt. He was a fucking cunt, but we had it out, and then everything was cool. Because he was being a dick during one of the interviews, and I was like, can you stop filming? And they did. I said, dude, tonight when you play and I'm at your show, I'm gonna run up and I'm gonna unplug your bass amp every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And he was like, why? Awesome. And I was like, because then you can see what it's like to somebody be an asshole while you're trying to work.
Yep.
And he was like, point taken. And then he was cool. So, and I'm trying, I was really lucky. There really wasn't anybody who was just like a total shitheel. Danzig would probably be the biggest dick, because Danzig met me backstage and said it was so great for somebody like me to be on MTV and blah, 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 blah. And then went out in front of an entire theater full of people and like, there's some fucking MTV guy here. If you see that guy, kick his ass. And I was
that's what the fuck?
That's fucked up.
Yeah, totally.
So I guess maybe him, but not even really. That's just Glenn. Like, Glenn got knocked out because he's like that. That's just how he is.
So the Lemmy story is now in the top 2 Lemmy stories told on this podcast, because we had Greg Bergdorf from Zebrahead fame back 4 months ago, and he told us the story of how they came about making the cover of Enter Sandman they did with Lemmy. So it's pretty cool to hear another awesome Lemmy story here. Yeah, at the Grammys and going and hanging out. He's like, I smelled like weed, and he smelled like Jack Daniels. It was awesome. Just sitting next to him at the Grammys. Yeah, he's probably the greatest thing that happened with Lemmy. Is I ran into Lemmy again, just on like a social, not a social note, but I happened to be somewhere he was in Los Angeles, and he remembered me from the interview, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, we're actually playing a couple of shows out here. My band Puny Human." He's like, "Oh, you have a band?" And I was like, "I'm sure you hear that idea, whatever." And he was like, "You had one of your CDs?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I gave it to him, and he's like, "Let's go listen to it." I was like, "Now?" So we sat in this car that I had rented and listened to the record, and he was like, "That was really good." And I was like, "Well, I can die now." Yeah, that's fucking awesome.
But I mean, that was a great story. Ozzy, I get along really well with Ozzy and hung out with him and his family a lot. Sharon at one point wanted me to come and play drums behind Sabbath Reunion while they did Paranoid.
Wow.
And MTV wouldn't let me do it. MTV used to say that it would affect the trusting, I forget the word, but it was like this of MTV News. And I was like, MTV News, we're not new. Like, I don't know, whatever. But
yeah, right.
That was also the other big thing, is I was like, we're not a news program. No one trusts us like a news program.
Yeah. The other thing from the bungalow story that kills me, we talked about this a ton on this podcast, how the late 90s, early 2000s, there was just so much money just thrown around the music industry before.
Yeah,
and
it was.
You're hanging out at a bungalow and all of these huge names are just coming through because that's just what happened, right?
Yeah, and it was the time of the festival. And I'm guessing like the festival thing was like the ultimate credit card ripoff, because they would just be spending money and spending money on the shit bands, like the bands that were opening up the second, front, third, post, third, fourth stage. And they would have a bus and bands or labels were paying. I remember the guys from Killswitch Engage. I knew them pretty well. And then I got to know Howard, their second singer, really well for a while. And they were telling me the amount of money that their label was paying for them to be on this tour. And I'm like, you're never going to sell that many records. And they're like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It was like money that they weren't going to have to pay back, so they weren't real worried about it.
Good for them, yeah.
Yeah, but there were all these fucking bands that were just like, who are you? And why are you on here? That band, Power Man 5000. Weren't those the guys that wore the makeup?
Yep.
One of them.
Yeah.
It's funny, Ian, you mentioned about the tour bus. So we grew up in Maine, and there'd be, a 200 cap room, and the band would show up and like two 18 wheelers, and it's like someone's getting ripped off.
Mm-hmm. I was just like, I remember I became really, like, one of the people that I became legitimately actually non-bullshit friends with, like 25 years later, however long it's been since I've been on MTV, we're still constantly in touch, is Corey from Slipknot.
Corey's an awesome dude, right?
And he is a golden human being. Like, whether you like his music or care about Slipknot and blah blah whatever, that's irrelevant to me. He is endlessly creative. He's written more songs for other people than you'd probably even venture to guess. And he's a sweetheart, and he's the most generous human being in the fucking world. Like, I called him up one day. I was like, "Hey, you want to do me a favor?" I was like, "You're gonna tell me to fuck off." He's like, "What?" I was like, "This girl that I work with, she's a sweetheart. She's the sweetest kid in the world. It's her birthday. She loves Slipknot. Will you send me a text message of a video saying happy birthday?" He's like, "Yeah." 10 minutes later, it shows up. I showed it to her. She starts crying.
Amazing.
Like, that's the dude that Corey is. Like, I will defend that motherfucker to the death. He's like my brother from another. And we had our formative thing on, but one of them was I flew down to forget where, Denver or something, and rode back with them across country to New York. And they were on this tour, and I was like it was them and System of a Down and somebody else. And they were at first it was them and System of a Down and Rammstein.
Pledge of Allegiance tour.
Yeah, and Rammstein's guitar player vanished in Chicago. Like Rammstein, they came and they're like, we don't know where our guitar players. We have no idea. We haven't seen them. We haven't talked to them. We're going home. And we were like, cool, bye. But they were selling out maybe 2/3 of this place. And I'm watching the Slipknot show. And first of all, there's 187 of these guys on stage. And they've got this fucking drum set that rises up and flips around and it turns into a pentagram. And they have all these things that go up and down and fire lasers and blow torches and stuff. And then I'd be in the back and be like, we're not making any money on this tour. And I was like, well, I'd like to, I might be able to help you out with that.
Right.
And there's a couple places you could kind of cut out.
Yeah, I was like, you know how Joey's drum flies in the air? Don't do that. Give him a regular drum set. Let him play. What do you think about it? You know the part where Clown bounced up in the air 900 feet and then flames? No flames. How about no flames?
But the flames are fucking awesome.
Right. They were like, yeah, but that's part of the experience. And I was like, well, then shut up about the money. It's either or. Yeah. And but like that was, one of the things that I used to notice in the 90s is that there was just, and it was not just them, it was hip hop, endless amounts of money just being thrown around. It was being thrown at me. Yeah. MTV was like, we really like what you do. Here is a sacrilegious amount of money to do nothing. I did nothing for 3 years, but fly around and talk to famous people and be a dick.
What a gig.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a great gig, and I fucked it up. Like, people are always like, do you miss MTV? I don't miss any part about MTV except the money. Like, right now, my day-to-day job, I do more in the first 8 hours of the first Monday of the week that I work than I did in the entire 3 years at MTV, and I don't make anywhere near the money that I made there. So that I miss. But, and I miss people giving me free shit. Because, like, I still have some of the free shit. Like, Joe Quesada gave me this giant Hulk statue and signed it. And awesome. Joe Quesada runs Marvel. I don't know if you guys are comic book nerds. And I get stuff like that, and that was all cool. I had to sell most of my stuff because, like, I got fired from MTV, and then I was broke, and then no one would hire me because I was the MTV guy. So, like, the MTV taste or stench was all over me. So I couldn't get hired anywhere else. And then I had made Viacom so mad that Viacom sent out a notice that I was not to be hired by any other Viacom property.
Oh, geez.
Because when I make an enemy, I go for broke. And so I couldn't get, and so I, like 6 months after I was fired from TV, I was working at Whole Foods on a loading dock, and I was making $10 an hour, and I was living in Boston, paying $3,000 or $2,500 a month to live in a studio that had rats. That was super humbling. But a lot of the really cool shit that I had and the toys and all the stuff I collected, I sold because I had to make money for rent, and it was a real bad time. And I was also very, very, very much playing the martyr. And I've found as you get older, if you accept responsibility for the things that you do and go, all right, I kind of fucked that up. What did I do? What could I do different? It's weird. Your body and your brain will let you relax, but as long as you fight it and it was all everybody else's fault, you just stay this ball of tension forever. And that was me for at least 10 years after MTV stopped. And it was real bad, real dark time. But I pulled out of it and all as well.
Yeah, speaking of MTV and the tension, we were thinking like, damn, those productions, MTV had money that you're talking about, just pretty much throwing money around. Were you at the MTV Music Awards in like 2000?
Yeah, I was there all 3 years. There was 1 month out of every year around the summer, August or whenever the show was, they would send me out to California, and I would live in California for a month. And because we were doing stuff leading up to the VMAs, and so I would go around and do little skits and crap for them for the leading up to the show. So I was there for that, and they you should have seen the like thanks for coming bags that, because one of the greatest one of the greatest sleight of hands, one of the greatest Kaiser Sozes that MTV ever pulled was the Video Music Awards, because not one fucking celebrity wanted to be there. Not one. None of them. They all were just like, I hate this. But they would give them these gift bags that you could have like killed a fucking mule with. And they were all filled with like all kinds of like ridiculously expensive shit. And that's how and the celebrities would come in, sit down, do their part, and come out the back, get in their limo and leave. Nobody was hanging out. It wasn't the place to be and all that. And so, I would do my little promos there, and I got to meet some cool people that I wouldn't have gotten to meet otherwise. Like I have a picture of me and Samuel Jackson that was taken by. Did any of you ever watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Oh, yeah,
a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, did you guys ever watch How I Met Your Mother?
Yep.
Okay, the girl with the red hair that was from Buffy?
Allison Hannigan, right?
He took the picture. So that was a weird moment.
Mm-hmm.
And like when the kid that played Screech came up to me and was telling me about his band that was largely inspired by Frank Zappa, that was a weird moment. There was a lot of weird moments at the Video Music Awards that were cool, but the money they spent on it was out of control. Especially because like the music awards, the Video Music Awards, they had tons and tons of money to do stuff with, but because they were getting tons and tons of money because it was this high-rated show. But the movie awards, nobody watched, nobody cared, and they still spent the money. And then the Video Music Awards were just out of control.
So we, one of the first bands that we got into, so we're all mid-30s. So if you backdate us, we're 10 years old, mid-90s, was Rage Against the Machine. And were you at the 2001 where Tim Comerford climbed the stanchion? Mm-hmm. Did people know what the fuck was going on?
No, it was funny there. So they have like the setup where the people are, and then they had this back room where they would bring celebrities out there willing to talk to us, and then they'd be interviewed. And so I was on my shift interviewing bands, and so they'd come up and, what's it like to have won a Moon Man? And I would do that, and then all of a sudden there was like this hubbub, and they're like, what's he doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? So I walked to the door and I peeked through, and he's climbing the thing, and everybody's just like, what? I think in the moment, it seemed like more people were afraid he was going to fall. Right. And the big headline for MTV was going to be like, Rage Against the Machine's bass player died for no fucking reason at an event. The one thing, and I don't know that this is true. This is totally me speculating. So anybody out there who's getting ready to fucking get their rage at me, no pun intended, I don't know this is true. From what I can understand and from what I gathered, a lot of what he did that was, one, they didn't want to be there. So no one really knows why they were there. And they didn't want to be there. They lost the award to, like, I don't know, the Hives or some like ridiculous band that didn't matter. And also there was a lot of tension in the band. And the bass player, like, I think the bass player and Zach De La Rocha just didn't get along. And the bass player knew that this would piss Zach off. I don't think he knew that it would piss him off to the point that he quit the band. But he was like, so he did this, haha, I made a spectacle of myself. And Zach, who is like pathologically takes himself too seriously, just couldn't hack it, and that's how the band imploded. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I've heard. And so I always liked Rage Against the Machine. I could have, like, if the guitar player talked a little bit less about going to Harvard, that'd have been nice. And you know, Zach, if Zach had like a little bit more of a sense of humor about himself, but that fucking drummer was out as a drummer. That guy was out of control.
Brad.
Good.
Yeah. Brad Wilk.
Yeah.
Nate ran into him a couple weeks ago in LA, right?
Oh, really? Yeah. Was he cool?
Yeah.
He was very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a super badass drummer, and whether you like the bass player or not, or think he's a jerk or whatever, or he has stupid tattoos, that the two of them as a rhythm section were kind of untouchable. Yeah. And they were the only reason that What's His Ass could get away with just wee all the time, and the song still being interesting, was because they just laid down this groove that you could not get into. I thought
couldn't fuck it up, right?
Yeah, you could.
The groove was too good.
They're so locked, and I saw them live a couple of times, and I was not a huge fan. Mainly, they were one of those bands that I wasn't a fan of theirs because I wasn't a fan of their fans, which happened to me a lot. But they're just like Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses got a lot of shit. They're fucking idiots and whatever. But those fuckers brought it live. And Zach and those guys came out and crushed it live every time I saw them, whether they wanted to be there or not. So, you know, I later on, once I kind of dropped, I got too old for the pretense of, well, I like this because and this and that. And I was like, what do I like because I like it? I don't like all their songs. And I certainly like all their records, but the records are the songs that they have that I do like, I really like. And I think they were just sort of really learning how to write songs, and then they broke up. I really would love to have seen what they had done if they'd stayed together and come this far, especially these days with this much to write about. Yeah. I think it would have been very cool. But they would have been perfect this summer on tour had we been able to do that. They could have really, made that impact. I mean, if they had the youth involved the way that they had the youth involved when they were big, now I might have more of a hope that Trump won't get a second term.
Yeah.
So, it's too bad that they were one of the bands that broke up in that 90s time that I was like, that's too bad they broke up. They were really good. Same thing with Soundgarden. Like, I don't love Soundgarden, but like all those grunge bands, if you want to call them that, Nirvana, they were desperately trying to marry the pop sensibility of the Beatles with this sort of like garagey punk vibe. And of all the bands, and I'm not a huge Soundgarden fan, like the Soundgarden songs that I love, but I don't like whole records of theirs by any stretch of the imagination. But they are the band that came closest to achieving that with Black Hole Sun. Like if you listen to Black Hole Sun, it's strife with so much Beatles that just blanketed over their particular brand of hard rock. And that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you come from Outshine. So if you look at like Super Mega OK to where they were when they broke up, that's a tremendous growth. I mean, Nirvana didn't grow that big. Smashing Pumpkins didn't grow that big. None of those other bands grew as musicians and songwriters as much as they did. So again, it would have been cool to see where they went. Like Green Day, I'm not a Green Day fan, but if you look at Dookie and then you look at where they are now, whether you like them or not, their ability as songwriters has grown exponentially. To where they're doing more interesting things now. Whether you care about them and whether you call them punk or that whole argument, not interested in. But I'm just saying, like, and so I would really love to have seen where Soundgarden went. Like as much as I love Nirvana, I don't think Nirvana had much after In Utero, unless they just completely became a noise band, which would have been fucking awesome.
Well, Soundgarden was on SST early on, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. I know, we just saw that in our the other day. We were looking stuff up. We're like, holy shit, they were on that. How did that even happen in Texas, right?
Yeah, I know. I still don't know how it happened. I would still love to hear the story because I'm like you guys. I had no idea, and a buddy of mine hipped me to that. I was like, "You're full of shit." He had to look it up on the internet and show me until I believed him. I'm like, there's no fucking way. And he was like, boom.
Totally.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we did the other night, Twan. You and I were like, holy shit, they were on that. And you were like, I had to look it up myself. I'm like, yeah, no, that was.
And they were one of those bands, like people, I never really fully understood how important they were to that whole little Seattle scene until I watched the Pearl Jam documentary, because Pearl Jam's a weird band for me. Like I'm trying to figure out why people like them. I've been trying for many years. It hasn't come to me yet. It's me. It's not them. It's not.
I love it.
Me.
Nate's a huge Pearl Jam fan, so I love this.
No hurt
I'm just
feelings.
like, I love the first record. Love the first record. Love it. And then everything else, I'm like, I want to like this, but I don't. And every year, I'm like, this is the year that fucking that Pearl Jam's the rest of their thing. They're gonna rock me. And that's going to be, and I'm going to get it. And then I buy like 2 records and I'm like, don't get it. Still don't get it. And same thing with like, I'm trying to think, there's another. Oh yeah. One of my big rock faux pas. I have many rock faux pas that my friends make fun of me. I don't like any version of Van Halen. David Lee Roth, David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar, none of them. Don't care at all. Run in with it. Fuck you. Don't care on any level. On any level.
You don't like the Zoobity Bops? You're not into that?
Nope, I don't care. I live my life. Right. I get it. You live your life.
So Ian, you strike me as a Panama guy.
Oh yeah. That or Jump. My punk rock friends, they hate me because I'm like the Germs. Don't get it. Never will. Tried. Don't care. Descendants. Don't give a fuck.
Come on.
Tried. Don't care. I'm not a loser. Okay. I'm glad you're not.
Milo's a great album.
You might want to try Decaf. I'm not a fan. Now, Bill Stevenson and his work in Black Flag, I will bow to him as a drummer any day of the week. And I don't hate the Descendants. It's just one of those things where I don't get it. Like there's bands where the band sucks, and if you like them, I worry about you. Like if someone comes up to me and they're like, I really like Maroon 5. I don't know what to say. Like I'm like, really? Like do you not get out a lot? Like have you never heard music? Whereas if someone comes to me and says the Descendants were one of my favorite bands of all time, of course they were. I get that. I understand it. Their importance is unfuckwithable. And I will argue anybody who says the Descendants are overrated in their impact in punk rock, because that's an ignorant statement. But just for me, I put it on and go, I don't really want to listen to this anymore. And so those are just my own. That's why I call them my faux pas, because they're clearly my mistakes. My brain just isn't wired correctly, and I don't know if it ever will be. And so so there's just a lot of those bands that I wanted to get, and I don't. But anyway, Soundgarden I was never a huge fan of, but I really appreciated how much they grew as artists. I appreciate anybody, I guess, especially when I started to get, as pretentious as this is going to sound, when I started getting into jazz, I started really like sort of branching out as being interested in songwriting. Not that I can't write, so I play drums, I can't write songs, but just the art of it and the growth of it. There's bands that I absolutely worship who just pissed away. They tapped out and they just couldn't do it anymore. And they put out records. And Pearl Jam, I want to like them, and I just don't. They've got 300 records. They do everything they do everything perfect. They do it on their own. They do it without Ticketmaster. They said, fuck the world. We're doing it punk rock. Neil Young, who's one of my favorites in the world, thinks they're awesome. People that I love and respect. They got Matt Cameron, one of the greatest drummers to walk the face of the fucking earth, as their drummer. Everything on paper should say Ian is rocking a Pearl Jam shirt, and my brain goes and something just stops, and it makes me angry because I feel like if my brain was wired right, I would really enjoy them, but it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's gonna need like an out-of-body experience. You're gonna need maybe take like psilocybin or something.
That's what I need. I need to get really drugged up and listen to it, be like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah,
because I was like really, really high when I discovered why Pink Floyd were great. So maybe I need to do.
Yeah, true. That's a lot of people were.
Yeah, I heard them and I was like, we don't need. I was like, oh, right, the wall. I love that soundtrack. That's great. And then they were playing me Pigs, where they're like,
Pigs is fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't get it. And my friend was like, take this. And
now you get it. Yeah, here's the door.
Now I get it.
Ian, here's something that we are all always contemplating is like thinking of like not really understanding what the hell happened or what's going on or why we can't identify with it. Like, did you see MTV kind of going in this direction of like not music at all, like not music TV, like reality TV randomly? Did you see that coming?
I mean, there's not an ounce of music.
Yeah.
The reason, and I'll try to, because I actually get this oddly enough was actually explained to me by the president of MTV Networks, this fucking cuntbag named Dave Sarolnik. He explained to me why MTV was turning into the smelly, toothless prostitute that it was. And what goes on is this. So MTV cable is not a huge ratings maker. Like when the Oz family, when they did that show that made Ozzy look like an idiot, they did that show. It did like a 0.06. Mm-hmm. I did a show one time that almost did 1 point. And they did everything but fucking line up to blow me. Like, they were so excited. And then you look at something like Friends, and Friends is routinely on reruns doing 7.5, 9, 10, 12. You know what I mean? It's a different world. So MTV, when I got to MTV, it was the death rattle of music because they were, for them, they were trying to figure out how to commodify it. Because the problem is when people watch videos, they're like, I love this video. I love this video. I don't like this video. And they switch it. So because they turn the channel, they cannot give advertisers any block of time where the ratings are up versus the ratings are down. We have 37 billion people who are watching during the year. This costs this much money. Now, MTV made more money in advertising than most cable because MTV was branded a tastemaker by the kids. And so MTV was like, okay, music really has no place anymore. People don't care about music videos. The Video Music Awards are getting lackluster. Nobody wants to spend any money. And this is, people were downloading music and, YouTube creeping in didn't probably help too much.
No.
They needed to figure out a way to commodify MTV where it could make the most money. And that's what MTV2 was supposed to be, the video channel, until more people started watching MTV2 than were watching MTV. So they're like, oh, we can make money on advertising. So they did exactly what they did to MTV, and they turned it into blocks of shows. And once they had a couple of hits, like I was on one of their shows, the show's about houses.
Cribs.
Cribs.
Yeah. I was on Cribs, which was funny, but like Cribs, and then they had like Pimp My Ride.
Yeah, with Exhibit.
They saw the power of the half-hour show, and I was there when those shows were getting big. That was it, and you could just smell it in the air. They didn't want to do news reports about music. They didn't, and the only thing they would really talk about was anything that was multi-billion, in-your-face pop culture at the time, and that was happening. Just like the first grooves and scratches of that was happening when I was there and when I got fired, and then pretty soon, like TRL went off the air, and they sold the studio, and then now they're just this. All they do is do teenagers fucked up live shows, and then like competition shows between attractive people. But it's kept them afloat because YouTube and the internet. It's funny because before I worked what I do now remotely. I worked at Apple, and I worked with a lot of children. I don't mean like I'm 50, you guys in your mid 30s. I'm talking about mid 20s and younger. Like I got tattoos on me that were older than like a third of the people that I worked with. And their thoughts on MTV are like our thoughts on a TV only having 3 channels. Really? That existed? And they're like, MTV was important? You're kidding me. Like they just have this look in their face like a dog that's been shown a card trick. And that's because MTV just sort of lost any place they had in actually being important because they wanted to make as much money as they could because cable doesn't make a lot of money. And they were, as we were talking about earlier, guilty of throwing money around. They were throwing money at me that I didn't deserve. And so that's why the music went this way, and you could just see it. You would go in there and you could just smell it. They had no interest in music. They had no interest in new bands. They had no interest in what makes music tick or what kids are into or whatever. They were interested in making sure they can make money on advertising. And you could see it happening, and then it just went completely out of control. And now I don't even know what they do anymore. I thought they'd gone off the air entirely because someone said first they removed the music from their name. Now it's MTV, but it doesn't say music television. It just says MTV, all letters.
Oh, that's right.
And I was like, and then someone told me that they shut everything down, but like reruns. But I guess not. I guess they're still kicking.
You know, the best analogy is like KFC is not Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's KFC.
Yeah.
So it's not real chicken.
There's no chicken there. And there's no music there anymore.
There's no music there. There's just and the funny thing is the best part about it for me is that all MTV ever could live on was their ego about we're MTV. And now there is 2 generations of kids that don't give a fuck. They're like I remember when MTV was the shit. I'm 50. There's guys your age who remember the death rattle when it was kind of ending in the 90s and sort of over. And then there's kids who were born in the year 2000 who were like, it's just like this weird thing in the universe that they hear about from, their old man father like me, who's like, MTV was, and it's very strange to be old enough to see something like that happen.
Yeah. Yep.
But
it's a completely different world from when we were kids. I remember, being 9-10 years old, waiting for 9 o'clock at night so I could watch the 9 Inch Nails Closer video. So for that to be that world premiere, here comes this big video, that doesn't happen anymore. So
and it was it was one of the things I always loved about everybody says, dude, you gotta bring back the Headbangers Ball. The Headbangers Ball is the greatest thing in the world. And I'm like, all right, I watched the Headbangers Ball when it was on. You had to sit through a lot of Poison to get to Slayer. Like you had to sit through a lot of Dokken to get to Pantera. So let's just ease up on making it like the greatest show in the history of music channels, because it really was.
Totally. All right, so we're gonna jump into a quick little lightning round.
Okay.
Kind of one word-ish answers. the best you can do it.
One wordish, one sentence.
Right. One sentence, couple sentences. We'll give you a couple sentences.
I start bleeding out of my eyes. I apologize.
So, first one I have is you talked a little bit about all the stuff that you got while you were there or other places. Favorite piece of, we call it nerdery. So it could be a record, it could be a poster, it could be any of that kind of ephemera. It could be comics too, because we know you're big into comics. Favorite piece of nerdery you own? That
I own right now?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. I'm not going to overtalk, but it's going to take me a second to think.
Okay.
Probably.
He's looking at it right now. Play by play.
Looking at like a couple of things. I'm like,
Yeah.
If I had to, if someone put a gun in my mouth and said you can only rescue 2 things from your house, it would probably be, I have a signed issue of Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, and I remember the old McFarlane Michael Myers figures.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have an old McFarlane Michael Myers figure signed by John Carpenter, the girl that played PJ with Toodley, Jamie Lee Curtis, like almost the entire film except for Annie, who doesn't really do like horror conventions or whatever. Those are probably my 2 but probably the two things I would rescue. The only other thing I would probably do it is Corey on his new solo record. The cover of it, he made himself like a championship wrestling belt.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
He made miniature ones and sent me one. I'd probably say.
Oh hell
that.
yeah, dude! That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That was that
CMFT. CMFT.
Yeah. So that would probably be it. Later tonight, I'll be laying in bed going, "Oh, I forgot to say this." But
hit us up on Instagram. We can put it in the notes.
No, that's probably the two, because I have a lot of cool stuff that I've kept and I've collected. Those are the two things that I wouldn't want to live without.
Yep.
Nice.
Cool.
Any platinum records you have by chance?
I had a for Iowa. I had a platinum record thing for Iowa forever, and it got stolen.
No.
Oh no.
I had a break in. Yeah, the studio that I lived in Boston. When not only was it was a basement apartment, so whenever it rained, I was suddenly a fucking U-boat captain, and it also had really shitty security. So somebody broke in, and they didn't steal much, but that was sort of shiny and hanging on the wall, so they stole that.
It's going to be hard to resell that because it's got your name on it.
Yeah,
I don't think they thought the whole thing through. I think they were just like, Slipknot, platinum record, someone will buy it, and they probably looked at it and said, "Oh, it's got his name on it," and threw it in a dumpster.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes me mad. It's like if they sold it to feed their family, I'd be okay, but they probably just threw it away because it had my name on it. But that sucked. And then I was supposed to get a platinum record from System of a Down, but I got fired before it happened, and it just never happened.
So Ian, I see you have a Murphy's Law hoodie on.
I do.
2 questions. Favorite New York hardcore band of all time, 1. And 2nd, favorite New York hardcore album of all time.
Favorite New York hardcore band of all time. Oh, Jimmy's going to punch me straight in the face for saying
Say
nothing.
Madball, say Madball, say Madball.
No. I love those guys, and I've known them forever, but they are not my favorite band. Probably my favorite hardcore band of all time would be the Cro-Mags.
Yeah, Age of Quarrel.
And Age of Quarrel would probably be my favorite hardcore record of all time, because my actual favorite hardcore record of all time, which is one of the things I'm actually going to plug, they're from Jersey, so I guess it wouldn't count as New York. But my favorite hardcore band of hardcore record of all time, if you don't put New York in it, is a record called Fixation on a Coworker by a band called Dead Guy. That record is perfect. It's perfect.
They have one of the best logos too. Just the font.
Oh yeah,
it's iconic.
Yeah, Tim and me and Tim and Keith, the guitar player and the singer, became really good friends because that record came out and it like altered my view on music, of which there's very few records I can say that did that. And there's a documentary coming out in October about them that I'm in.
Nice.
Which is a great honor for me. But my favorite hardcore record in the world, if you want to call it hardcore, I call it more metal, but hardcore metal is Fixation on a Coworker. New York wise, it's definitely Age of Quarrel.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good choice.
Are you a real big Madball fan, or were you just being funny?
No, I am. Okay.
Yeah, Twan loves Madball.
Great guys, great live, just not my favorite hardcore.
Hold it down, set it off, demonstrate my style. I love all of it.
Yeah, they I have a great story about them. I was in this shitty wannabe punk club downtown watching some show, and they threw me out of the club because I was on MTV and I wasn't enough. Yeah, and Hoya was like, "Who did it?" He's like, "Fuck it, we're gonna blow the place up. We'll burn it down." I was like, "That's not necessary." They were super. They held. They were really good at like watching my back when, especially Isaac, who was a part of that crew, but he wasn't. He was in Crown of Thorns, and now he goes.
We've talked about him. We've talked about.
Yeah. Isaac. I love that kid. He's been at my back when people were going to kill me more times than I care to rattle off. But Madball's power were always live. Live, they were just an unstoppable wrecking machine. Record, it got boring to me after a while. But live, you just couldn't fuck with them at all. And Freddie's a sweet guy if he doesn't want to kill you.
Yeah.
If he wants to kill you, you're in a lot of trouble. If he likes you like me, he's a sweet guy. Plus, I was really, really good friends and still am with Toby from H2O. So since Toby's like the mayor of hardcore, I kind of had carte blanche with a lot of those guys. But anyway, sorry, lightning round, dragging it down. My bad.
No, this is great.
Awesome.
I love
this.
This
is
we love
great.
all of this.
Okay.
Yeah, we're notorious for tangents on here anyway, so we always joke about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ian, here's a 2-part question. Favorite musical experience, A, concert, and B, as an interview?
Well, let's see. As far as concert, that would be that's a hard one because that could go to like big shows or like little shows.
Let's do it 3-part then. Festival, concert, and interview.
As far as my favorite biggest show, like when I really saw like one of the big classic bands and was just knocked out is before they broke up, I saw the Police, and that stuck with me, and that was huge. As far as the show, I'll never forget this. Rollins was playing CB's, and a buddy of mine worked at Caroline Records, and he called me up. He's like, "Are we going to Rollins?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "There's a band opening up for them. They're from California. I just got their EP, and they're really good. You want to go?" And I was like, "Sure." And it was Tool. So I saw Tool. Oh, I saw Tool play CB's, and I was this far from them.
Awesome.
They went off the stage, and we were like, "So we're leaving, right? There's no reason to stay for Rollins because why?
Damn.
Like the why would you even want to see anything else besides that?" That was,
That's
and then
insane.
my favorite music experience of all time was playing the Rollins Black Flag reunion when my band played.
West Memphis 3-1.
Yeah, no one told anybody that there was an opening band. So as soon as we got out there, people started booing us, and by the end, people were like really into it. And the other thing was, I was sitting there playing, and I looked to my side, and there's Keith, the original singer of Black Flag, and Black Flag's probably my top 2 favorite bands of all time. And he's bopping his head, and I went up to him and I was like, he's like, "Hang on a t-shirt and some records. I love you guys." I was like, "Yeah." And I showed him my fingers because I have the Black Flag bars, and I was like, "This one got all fucked up. It's all scratchy and messed up. I'm gonna get it filled in." And he grabbed my hand and got real mad and goes, "Don't you fucking do that. That's fucking Black Flag." And I was like,
nice.
All right, I'll never do it again. I promise. That was probably the greatest like musical experience of my life, because we were playing in front of like 2,000 people, which is the most people we've ever played in front of. We won a crowd over, and one of my musical heroes was like bopping along to my music. I couldn't really get better than that. But seeing the Police and Devo was probably the bit like the most transformative concert. And then Tool is the best small. Like I saw Weezer when they were nobody. I saw Nirvana when they were nobody. But the Tool thing was just a different level.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And CB's is great.
Yeah, CB's
was great.
Was great. Now they sell suits.
That's crazy. What about interview, Ian?
Oh, interview.
Favorite interview?
Probably my favorite interview of all time was the first interview that I did with Corey when they were. It was the second year they had been on the Ozfest, and they were just starting to really blow up. Nice. And I met him, and we had and I think that was my favorite because it led to the really long-term friendship that we've had. Outside of that, probably my favorite was, weirdly enough, Marilyn Manson, because Manson made me be on my toes. I don't like him. I don't like his music. I have heard all the Alice Cooper I need. I don't care. But he doesn't like the media. So if you're not on your toes and ready to like vibe back and forth with him, it could get brutal. And I was able to keep up with him to the point of the next time I saw him, he was like, "Oh, hey, what's going on, dude?" And so that was cool.
Yep.
Nice.
It's
awesome.
Nice. We want to get to we want to get to the plugs, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I did want to ask you a couple comic questions because you are a big comic book guy, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, my brother's pretty big into it, so I leaned on him a little bit, and I wanted to ask. I was like, what do you think? Like, I need a good comic book question for someone who knows some stuff about it. Like, give me one. And he said, all right, so how does he feel about the proliferation of all of it, where it's become really part of the culture, big time, obviously with all the movies and, Disney Plus having pretty much just sitting on Marvel. And then even all the DC stuff too. How does he feel about that? Is he cool with it, or is he like anti it? So ask him something about that.
Okay, so the best way I could explain for me the way this is impactful is if you live long enough, and it's not like I'm 100, but if you are around long enough, you will see this happen to everything. Everything that no one wants to deal with somehow floats to the top of the screen or the top of the thing, and becomes part of pop culture. It happened. We never thought it would happen with punk rock. It happened with punk rock. Never thought it would happen with hip hop. Now it's happened with hip hop on an insane scale. Never thought it would happen with weird independent films. Independent films became the shit. It's just part of the way the culture works. I don't have any negative feelings towards it as far as the movies go. I like when they're done well. I only ask ever that you stay true to this, that you stay conscious and appreciative of the source material. Good example of that is The Dark Knight. All right, in The Dark Knight, Batman is using a lot of like grappling hooks and things you use for spelunking to create his costume. The Joker just wears face paint. He hasn't been burned into that. Okay, yeah, that's not the comic book, but the spirit of what those characters were from the comics is there. They're very referential and irreverent of the source material, so I can't blame. Same thing with the Marvel films. The Marvel films, whether you, they don't follow everything according to whatever, but they're very, very conscious of the characters and who should play them well, and not just milk them for money. It's something that DC hasn't quite mastered yet.
Mm-hmm.
Though oddly enough, DC kills it on TV, and Marvel can't put out a good TV show to save their fucking life.
Sure.
The only negative I have about it is that in the world of actual comic books, for dorks like me who read week in and week out, for comic books being this sort of separate entity where you could do anything and be anything and create anything and just go crazy is gone. Everything now must vie to the movie. Everything is, we're renumbering these so that people who don't read comic book, because they feel like there's this invisible pony that is people will see the movies and read comic books. That doesn't exist, but they haven't gotten that yet. So everything is a giant, this 14 issue crossover that's going to change the world forever. This person dies, but they die and they come back. They used to die and they would stay dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so now comic books are very much part of a machine. And that's a bum out, because some of the best stuff that was ever done, like Walt Simonson's run on Thor, the old 70s Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Luke Cage, or Power Man, if I want to be technical about it. Those were fucking bizarre. Old Doctor Strange, those things were bizarre and weird, and it was a great niche for that. And that's kind of gone because everything must move towards the movie. That's my only negative, but I love those fucking films. And I got friends of mine who are like, but I'm like, you're missing the forest for the trees, bro. Like, it's not the same thing. The only one I didn't like was Spider-Man. And that's only because they have yet to really understand the character, so they just haven't executed him right. Yeah. A for effort, but they just haven't, in my opinion. It's just me. But that's it. That'd probably be the only negative.
Cool. Yeah. So I think that kind of wraps us up as far as questions go. What do you want to plug in?
So a couple things. First, the Dead Guy documentary should be, the first trailer I think comes out the end of September, beginning of October. So look to YouTube for that. I'm in that along with a lot of other people who love that band. My own podcast,
nice.
Cream, Comics Rule Everything Around Me, which is a comic book podcast I do with a local Cincinnati artist named Jamie Filer, who is a fantastic fucking artist and a great guy. And we used to be able to bat comic books back and forth, but now thanks to COVID, it's like I do my part and he does his part. But it's called Cream, Comics Rule Everything Around Me, and we've been doing it for a couple of years. And it's I've had other podcasts that I've started and stopped because I get bored with them, but I still do that one. And if you like comic books, great. If you don't, we've really tried to twist the show so that you don't have to be initiated into it. You can just listen and maybe you'll hear something that you like. And then last is I'm currently with about 60 other artists who I can email you who they are. Me and my buddy Paul and Jamie, oddly enough, are doing a long form graphic novel of multiple short stories called Jaws Through the Multiverse. And what it is I've written about 10 short stories taking the characters of Jaws and putting them into just weird situations. Like at one of them, the Hooper, Brody, and Quint are old knights who find this cursed baby that's like a baby shark humanoid. They raise it and teach it combat. And then when the sea witch kills his family, he's like this Conan with a sword, but it's a shark. And we've got another one where there's the sharks versus the punks, and they're like a gang, like the Outsiders, but two of them are trying to start a band. And we've got another one that's like a mafia thing where Jaws is the mafia kingpin. We got it's like all these just fucked up weird stories that I came up with, and there's about 60 artists that have the art they've put together it's everything from like the fucking weird to just like straight wonderful beautiful art. We're looking to start a Kickstarter about that in probably the late October. So if you go to Instagram, my Instagram name is @Iann Robinson, IANNROBINSON, one word. And then Paul's got a really weird last name, so I'm going to spell it. Paul's the other guy who's involved. It's Paul Jurassic, not Jurassic. That sounded wrong. It's not it. But anyway, if you go to Paul's, it is Paul.Jurczyk, so JURCZAK. We're the two guys that are putting it together, and you can see a lot of the artwork, and you can see all the artists who are also on Instagram who deserve tons and tons of recognition. And then also Cream Podcast 513. that's the Instagram for my podcast. And then I'm trying to think, do I have anything else to plug? Do I? No, not right now.
So you're still super busy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I try to stay outside of like work, my wife and my 2 dogs. I try to stay creatively moving around. Whether anybody sees it or not is irrelevant to me. You know, like I write stories all the time that I'm like, wow, that's good, and then I put it in a box and no one ever sees it. I do it for me, just to keep the creative juices flowing, because the Midwest is gonna be hard to keep them flowing here. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, that's it. Like the big thing right now is the podcast and especially the book, because that just came out of nowhere and has become something really special really fast. We haven't even gotten it put together yet. We just have the artwork for it.
I saw some of the artwork on your Instagram and I was like, holy shit, these are awesome. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's and these artists are all like right now working for nothing. They're just doing it. Paul is weird. Paul is he's just like, he goes out and goes ooga booga, and everybody wants to do things for him. I don't know how he does it, and God bless him, because this would have never come together without him on any level. Cool. So, but that's about it.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah.
Hey, Ian, thanks. we're gonna keep you to your word on if this book ever comes a motion picture. To keep it genuine.
No problem. I will do that. I mean, I'd love that book to become a motion picture. It would just be a whole bunch of. If we were thinking about it as an animated movie, just like a whole bunch of weird Jaws stories and animated, but that's way down. Thanks for having me on, and I really appreciate it. I'm psyched to check out some of your other shows.
Please do. And if you like it, show some friends, because we're always trying to grow it, just like you are with that stuff. So,
and I'll definitely have all my buddies tweet the hell out of the fact.
Hell yeah, man, that's awesome.
For sure. Yeah, not a problem at all.
Very cool of you to come on.
Very much. And if you ever want me to go back on again, just ask.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Later, guys.
So that was our conversation with Iann Robinson, podcaster, writer, MTV VJ. He's writing a comic book, as you heard. He's got his hands in a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, he is the definition of nerd and practices nerdery, and not just with music. Like he's like a 2-sport captain, 3-sport captain. He's got his hands in everything, and I'm so glad we thought of him to come on the show. And he's the kind of guest. We've had a few of them where I think they'd be recurring guests if we wanted to.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and Twan, good job by you, man. That was a Twan, right from Twan's brain.
Yeah,
Twan outreach.
But yeah, I mean, he brought us back to 20 years ago when we're coming up in music, and we're seeing a lot of the bullshit on MTV, and then you see him who you can kind of identify with, and of course he gave us a behind the scenes look at a lot of it, but he was one of us. You could tell, and in hindsight, you could tell that he was deeper than what than some of the things that they wanted him to do, which he got into, which was great. He didn't hold back, and that's what we love. I mean, we're never out to get anyone or have any gotcha questions, but he was an open book, which we love.
Totally. It was actually the reason why we started the podcast, is kind of get like the granular details on what it was like, and luckily we're in a time where you can just be totally honest and transparent on everything, and he just didn't hold back at all, which is great, because it was literally behind the curtains on how things go down, the good and the bad and the ugly. And MTV was huge when we were coming up in music, and it was definitely the heyday, which he definitely highlighted, which when he was in it, it was great, and it started to dissipate over time. And now MTV obviously doesn't really have any association with real music at all, so we're all in that same kind of headspace where it's like, wow, like that's cool that you were there then. Like it's weird how it is now, and obviously it's 2020 now, and things have completely changed. The format and the industry as a whole is just a different place, and he was there literally at the height. So
yeah,
before we'd go to school.
You hit it nail on head. MTV is KFC, right?
Yeah.
You said that in the pod in the middle of the interview. I was like, dude, that is perfect, because it's exactly what it is. It's no longer chicken. It's just it's just 3 letters that have fucking ridiculousness on for 9 hours out of the day,
Yeah, when it's
but
abbreviated.
we grew up with a different world, so it's it's cool. I did want to just overview. We've had 9 guests on. We've had 9 awesome people on, right?
Yeah.
Ian fits that right to a T. We've been super fortunate. Everybody we've talked to has been super cool. Ian, we slide him right in there with everybody else that's been awesome and been gracious and been willing to talk to us. So thanks to him for doing that. Really cool nerdery stuff for us. Hearing how that whole system worked, and the money that was thrown around, just like the bungalow story, and then the Lemmy stories. Like he's lived a life, man.
And the whole like money being thrown around, like we could see that as teenagers. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he lived in it, like. And he was open about it, even they were throwing money at him, and it's just a sign of the times. And it's funny when we were talking about, actually, I kind of wish we brought it back to this in the interview, but when we were talking about the comic books, how I can imagine the creative process in creating a comic book, the big box movies influences what the comic book creators do.
Totally.
And that's like the new metal, like Korn is trying to put a single together to get on the big stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of parallels there. So it doesn't surprise me. He's a dual threat music comic book nerd.
Absolutely. In fact, that actually just reminded me of MTV TRL, where like bands are writing songs, or there's just probably, he didn't say it, but there's insane like payola behind the scenes to make sure they're on TRL, because that's front and center at the time, especially, right? So
tastemakers, right? As you said. And they were definitely, especially in that time frame, that late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, for us, I remember throwing on TRL and wanting to know what the number one video of the day was. Looking back on it now, it feels so stupid, but at 14 or 13, you're like, it's Christina Aguilera, fuck, I'm out. Oh, it's Korn. Okay, maybe I'll pay a little more attention. Or so, Blink 182, all the small things. All right, I'm into this. So yeah, I can totally see that.
Even when Christina Aguilera was on, it was pretty rad.
Oh no, I wanted to watch that. I just
the dirty music video.
Yeah, I didn't like the music.
Yeah.
She's our age. We're cool.
Yeah, when they cut it from the whole video to like half the video to like a snippet of the video, you saw that.
I know, right? How ridiculous was that when they went from like it's an hour or an hour and a half, and you'd get every second of the video, and then at some point it's like, oh yeah, here's number 10. It's 3 seconds of Disturbed or whatever it was at the time. You're like, okay, what are we doing here? I thought that's what this show was, and we're not even going to show the whole video now.
I totally forgot about that, because like on a local level, we had the COI Top 5 at 5. Like, imagine if they just played like the chorus,
30 seconds of a song.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's how we knew they were going downhill, right? It's like, we need less music on our music television station. Go to MTV2 for that.
He alluded to it too, like when like Napster and things came into the picture. It's like, well, that makes sense, because TRL was like my holy grail when I got out of, we got out of school. It was, I think it played like 4 p.m. or something.
Yeah, or 3 or right after.
3:30, 4 o'clock.
Yeah. And as soon as they started cutting down to like small parts of the video, I was like, oh, good thing there's Napster or Scour Exchange or all these things where I just download the video and watch it.
Yep.
So
is there a more MTV thing than dropping the music but keeping the M, which is what it's referred to?
Right.
Yeah.
So trying to play into the history.
Yep.
But pumping out a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
It's
to be honest, and I don't know if either of you guys read I Want My MTV.
No.
The oral history. Mm-hmm. They've always been pumping out bullshit, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's just a TV thing, honestly.
Yeah.
It needs to be all glossed up and all like cleaned up and buttoned down and that type of thing, where this medium podcast, we can just have a conversation like we're hanging out on a Friday night, because we typically would do this anyway. So
totally DIY or die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just funny. It's funny how that goes.
No, it's cool that Ian like gave us literally the behind the scenes look on how it goes down, because it's like, I don't know if you guys saw the clips or just like photographic evidence of like Anderson Cooper like sitting in like a pothole on the highway when it's like a downpour storm or whatever, and it's overly dramatic because it's CNN, but it's like it's actually not flooding. He's like actually sitting in a pothole. It's like, even CNN, MTV, everyone,
right?
Yeah, everyone's just making it a production when they don't really need to. They feel like they have to, unfortunately. So CNN, MTV, TV. Everything. Yeah, for TV. So, I mean, the fact that Ian was talking so candidly, it's like, dude, as music fans, we would probably feel the same exact way if we were in your shoes. And I would probably be, I don't know if we'd get fired or not, but who knows either way. At the end of the day, it's like, you're kind of taking the music appreciation out of it, even though this is supposed to be, it's supposed to be MTV,
Yep.
So can totally relate.
There's always corporate interests with television because there's eyeballs, and you know, that's happened at a bunch of places. Obviously, not just MTV, but it's one of those things that it starts off as wholesome tastemaker. We want to like change the game, and corporate interests always override that, and money always overrides that. Unfortunately, we're trying not to have that happen here. We're doing a good job so far, I think, right?
Yeah,
I think we're good.
Well, like even take YouTube where you curate it. You'll be jamming along to a music video, and then an ad pops up. So nothing's pure.
No.
But this podcast is.
Yeah, continues to be ad free, and if we ever do them, I mean, we'll try to put them at the beginning, at the end, to make it easier for you guys.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want to break the flow.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
We'll give you plenty of chance to hit that 30-second button. No, that was a great conversation, and he's got a bunch of stuff. We will check our socials. We will promote the hell out of his stuff, our stuff, this episode, all that fun stuff. Check the contest, because the contest is live, and you've got about 4 days to get your entries in. You know, we're gonna send you a free poster. you might as well put your name in the ring, right?
And the odds aren't bad, right?
Right now they're not. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's international, which is crazy because even I think we were talking about eBay and how some of this stuff could go on eBay, and we're gonna go super all out, and just be like, you know what, we could probably sell this, and maybe we will. Maybe we thought about maybe selling some of the nerdery, Nate's nerdery, my nerdery, as kind of like a fundraiser to keep this podcast going before we get sponsorships or whatever. But for now, yeah, we're just gonna give it away, you know, raffle style, internationally. Style. Yeah,
chili pepper style. Give it away.
Chili pepper style. Yeah, give it away now. So.
Yep. So peep those, and you know, hit us up if you liked it, and you know, we're available. We always are down to talk to anybody who hits us up on socials, hits us up on email. We're here for you guys, so check it out.
Awesome. Thanks for checking us out, guys.
Peace, podheads.
See you next week.
Cheers, all.